Judy, can you hear me? Obviously, yes. Oh, go. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 4 o'clock, so it's time to call to order the legal committee of the Roswell City Council for Thursday, September 24th, 2020. Like I say, it is 4 o'clock. So could we have the roll, please?
Counselor Stubbs?
Present.
Counselor Peterson? Counselor Perry?
Here.
Counselor Foster?
That doesn't count.
Was that you?
That doesn't count. Counselor Foster, are you there?
Yes, I can hear. As long as you're mic'd, I can hear the mics. I can't hear any discussion outside the mics.
Oh, okay. So are you present?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, so we have a quorum of our committee, and Counselor Foster is joining us through GoToMeeting. So thank you for that. Can we get an approval of the agenda? And before we do, let me bring attention to a few corrections. They're really minor, but on regular item 2, it's resolution 20, not 21. The same with number 3, resolution 20. Number 5, the ordinance is 20-13, I'm sorry, 20-13 instead of 14. And number 6, the resolution again is 20. And those changes will be made, I think, on the actual documentation. So if someone could make a motion, please, to approve the agenda with those corrections, I'd appreciate it.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda with the changes of number 2 being changed to resolution 20, dash, number 3, resolution 20 dash, number 5, ordinance number 20-13, and 6, resolution 20 dash.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda with those changes in numbering. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed,
Aye.
no? Opposed, no? Okay, hearing none, that's approved. We now have the approval of the minutes from the August 27th Legal Committee. They're attached. Are there any corrections, additions, changes?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the Thursday, August 27, 2020 meeting of the Legal Committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I have a couple changes, additions, whatever. Why, did you find them, or are you just saying, oh yeah, that's the way Judy is? Okay. I'm on page 4 of the packet, which is the second page of the minutes. In that first paragraph at the top, in the 5th line, where it says approval to advertise and hold a public hearing on the proposed ordinance revisions, I'm sorry, it's not revising to, it's revisions to chapter 16. So revisions instead of revising, sorry. And then toward the bottom of the page, item number 4, in the next to the last line, in item 4, it says City Council on the consent agenda. Counselor Peterson was the second, and I'm sure it was Perry because Peterson wasn't here. What? He was, yes, he had left by then. So, okay, so with those two, thank you. Counselor Peterson, you okay with that?
Second.
Okay. So, any other corrections, additions? All right, hearing none, then all those in favor of the minutes from the August meeting as corrected, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, they are approved as they have been corrected. Thank you. So let's move on to the airport leases. We have 3 of them. Scott, oh, there you are. Hello.
Afternoon, councilors. We'll start with the AirSail Building 115 lease. This would be a 5-year lease beginning October 1st of this year, going through September 30th of 2025. The rent amount is $8,477 a month for a yearly amount of $101,724. They lease 67,431 feet in Building 115 for warehousing.
Thank you. Are there any questions of our airport director?
The one thing that's slightly different in this lease is there is no CPI increase. It's a straight amount for the 5 years.
Madam Chair, may I ask why the deviance from the norm there?
In the negotiations, AirSail, this was a 15% increase over their previous rent. And so in the negotiations, that was really the compromise that we came to, that they could take the 15% increase if we didn't go up over the 5 years.
So what would the equivalent had been if there were a CPI or an increase attached to this over the next 5 years? What would that have been equivalated to, more or less, of a
So
percentage?
we would normally do a 2.5 or CPI, which is greater, or 3% or CPI, which is greater. So over 5 years, it could be
12 to 15%.
Yeah, 12 to 15%.
Is compounded.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So as the answer says, more than 12 or more than 15, correct?
Any other questions? Do you have a comment, Counselor
Well,
Perry?
Madam Chair, I just don't, I don't know how I feel about deviating from that. I just don't know how I feel. Of course, I wasn't part of the negotiations, so I don't know a lot of what happened in the between there, but I sure don't want to set a precedence of this for consideration in other areas as well. I think that maybe what I feel more comfortable with is making an approval with the CPI, and then if that deems to be a significant problem, allow management to work through that before it comes to council. That's just my part for discussion. I'd be glad to make a motion here in a moment, but I'm just putting that on the table for discussion right now.
Maybe we can ask what the concern was of the difference of the two?
It's just the difference in the price. It's a pretty big jump.
But they're willing to pay 15% off, I mean, with the first, whereas had they accepted the CPI, it would have been 2-ish%.
Yeah, yeah. We can negotiate a little bit. It basically is, that kind of comes down to what we look at as far as what we think inflation is going to do. So typically I go 2.5%, 3%, and usually not much different than that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, come to a microphone, please.
Madam Chair, may I say something while the mayor's on his way out?
Sure.
Do you know, I just, and I understand, it is a 15% jump, I understand that, but I think that especially our market. We've played our market rather low on pricing in order to bring people in and keep competitive business here in Roswell. I just see by doing a 15% increase right now with no CPI or any kind of increase throughout the 5 years, we see ourselves in a similar situation in 5 years. We're going to have a little bit more, but we're not making headway of what we're really trying to do out there at the Air Center. That's just my thoughts. I'll yield.
May I ask a question? Are you saying the 15% and CPI?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Just a little math here, unless I've screwed this up. This works out to $1.51 per square foot per year.
Correct.
$1.51, which
What does?
the lease, the
No,
current.
but the
So-
15%?
Yes, this right here, the 101,000
Oh,
works out to $1.51 per year per square foot.
So to project backwards, I didn't do the math, but it's 15% less than $1.51 currently.
So,
go ahead. Thank you. Counselor Perry?
Well, I think that exhausts just my thoughts. I'm prepared for a motion, but I sure want to put that on the table for any discussion. If Counselor Foster, if Counselor Peterson or yourself have any other thoughts before I move forward with the motion.
Counselor Peterson?
The 15%, that is, that'll be for 5 years?
Yeah. So it would go up 15% over today's price to start the first year. And then whether or not we use a CPI, we'd either stay at that price for the rest of the lease for the full 5 years, or it would go up at a minimum percentage or CPI, whichever is greater.
So we're going to be making 15% each year,
No.
this year?
Well, over today's price, yes, not 15% increase every year.
But it would be, if we had to wait for a CPI, it'd be 3% each year, or 2%, whatever.
So we would get 15% the first year, and then the CPI would bring it up another 2.5 or 3 each year, just to be clear.
So
Over the 15.
am I clear that the negotiated price would be 15% over what they're paying this year for the
Correct.
next 5 years, and CPI will kick in the second year?
Second year.
Second,
Correct.
third, fourth, and fifth year?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Counselor Perry?
Madam Chair, I think that, just so I'm clear, so for the other committee members of my thought here, 15%, if I've done my calculations correctly, which I am not a mathematician, we're looking at 27 cents a square foot over what we're getting now, okay? That 15% sounds like a large jump, but we're talking about 27 cents per square foot. I think that 15% is a very reasonable to move forward with, but I still feel we should put the 2.5% or CPI, whichever is greater, attached with this contract. That's my feelings. It shouldn't be an either or, it should be both.
Okay, so Counselor, you're saying basically add that to this first
Yes,
year?
ma'am.
So
No,
instead of
it would-
kicking
it would-
in,
It would be, my motion would be, I'm not making the motion right now, but my motion
Right.
would be for the rent in the amount of $101,724 payable in 12-month installments of $8,477 plus 2.5% or CPI, whichever is greater, annually. So in 12 months from the adoption of this, you would see that increase coming.
And just for history as well, the lease that they're currently ending has had a CPI in it for all the 5 years previous. If I remember right, that was a 3%. It might have been 2.5, but I believe it was 3.
Madam Chair, may I ask one more question?
Sure.
What is the norm right now, 2.5 or 3%?
3.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, if you're ready for a motion, I'd be willing to make one.
I believe, yes, let's have.
Is
I
Counselor-
still have one question, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Counselor Foster, go ahead.
Now, did I understand right? Did you say that the CPI just doesn't kick in the first year, but it did kick in the second, third, fourth, and fifth year?
That is correct.
Okay, so we're going up 15, and then we're just not doing a 2.5 or 3% for the first year, but then for the next 4 years, it will go up.
Correct. Well, not
Okay.
the way it's worded now, but the way Counselor Perry's talking about it, it would.
Okay, okay, all right. Well, that's what I wanted to be clear, so, all right, thank you.
Okay, is there
All
any
right.
further discussion? Yes, Counselor Peterson.
So we're gonna, Counselor Perry wants to add 2.5%
3.
or 3% to this. So so it'd be 18% the first year?
No.
Be 15 the first year,
First, okay.
and then 3% the second, third, fourth, and fifth.
Which is, if I can add, Counselor Peterson, a norm, a consistent norm for our leases at the Air Center.
Correct. The only reason that this 15% is there on the front end is simply because we're trying to catch up, as Counselor Perry mentioned.
It's where we need to be.
Correct.
Mayor?
Some more math. If there is a 3% increase, that means the rent would go up 4 cents per square foot per year. Approximately 4 cents per square foot per year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're not talking about, Madam Chair, fixing all of our problems at the Air
At the-
Center
right.
through this. But we need to be consistent. I believe in consistency, and that's just where I am. If you're ready to entertain a motion, I'd be glad to give one.
I think so, yes, please.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we put on the consent agenda for full city council in the month of October, the approval of a lease agreement with AirSail Incorporate for building number 115, consisting of 67,431 square feet, more or less, at the Roswell International Air Center. As a 5-year term commencing October 1st, 2020 and ending September the 30th of 2025, unless sooner terminated by provisions hereof, in the amount of $101,724 annually and 12 monthly installments of $8,477 each year of the lease, to include a 3% or the CPI, whichever is greater, annually, subject to all other terms and conditions of the lease.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion and we have a second by Counselor Foster. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of putting this renewal for air sale on the consent agenda in October, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. The next one is Red Mountain Arsenal?
Yes, Red Mountain Arsenal, as you guys know, occupies Building 60 on the Air Center and is a small arms ammunition manufacturer. Their business has increased, and they've done some hiring of additional people, and they are producing more ammunition and need a place to store it. So they've approached me to lease Bunker 1112, which is over on the west side of the Air Center, west of runway 17, just west of the DOT training area. This would be a 1-year lease for $3,600 annual, $300 a month, and that comes out to about $2 a square foot.
Okay, appreciate it.
Madam Chair, if I may ask, what is the percentage in CPI thereafter? Or is this is 1 year? I'm sorry. Never mind.
It would have been a good question.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on Red Mountain Arsenal leasing bunker 1112. Hearing none, then do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we send to full council on the consent agenda of the October regular meeting, the lease agreement approval with the City of Roswell and Red Mountain Arsenal LLC for building number 1112-1112, consisting of 1,500 square foot more or less, located at the Roswell Air Center. And the terms will be 1 year, commencing November the 1st, 2020, and ending October 31st, 2021, unless sooner terminated by provisions hereof, in the amount of $3,600 payable in 12 monthly installments of $300, subject to all other terms and conditions of the lease.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the lease with Red Mountain Arsenal. Is there any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, then, all those in favor of putting this on the consent agenda? Ooh, I don't want to know what that was. I don't want to. Did you fall in the bathtub, Counselor Foster? Okay, okay, we have a motion. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the Red Mountain Arsenal lease agreement presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Then thank you. It will be on the consent agenda for the October council meeting. Thank you. Do you have one more?
I'm doing the next one.
You're doing it. Oh, okay. Our third lease agreement, or no, it's not a lease agreement, it's a lease assignment out at the Air Center is NTVI Fed Incorporated. Parker.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. This one, I'm taking it just because I drafted this assignment. It's a short little document. Basically, Aurora Alaska LLC is a wholly owned subsidiary of NTVI Fed LLC. So they just asked us if they could put it from one entity to the other entity. And so we went ahead and drafted that assignment agreement, since although one's a subsidiary of the other, they are legally separate entities. And so to accomplish that, we have to do it by an assignment of the lease. At the same time, we are increasing the rent amount from right now it's $1,620 a month, and it's going up to $1,804 a month. And we're also at the same time extending the lease for another additional option term from October 30th this year to September, should be 31 next year. I wrote 21 up there.
So I'm sorry, it should be what?
30th to September 31, 2021.
Okay,
My PowerPoint just has a typo.
thank you. Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments of Mr. Patterson?
I do that all the time. Everyone does.
Okay, let me ask you, on page 14 of the packet, which is the first page of the assignment, on the third whereas, when it says which will now expire September 30th, 2020, is that supposed to be 21?
No, because unless it's renewed, it will expire now. That's how the options to renew work. Unless we mutually agree to extend it, they expire. So it expires now unless we extend it. And so in this agreement, that's one of the things we're doing, is extending it.
To September 2020.
Right. To September 2021.
So, assigned or twice renewed, which will now expire September 30th, 2020. I'm thinking that should be 21.
No, because it will expire this year unless we renew it. It will now expire unless renewed.
Madam Chair, the two words after that, unless renewed. It's on a whereas that's when it's going to expire unless renewed.
Okay, this is not okay. Never
That's the
mind.
whereas, yeah.
Yeah.
Does everybody remember Gilda Radner? Never mind. Okay, thank you. All right, any questions or comments on this assignment?
This
Hearing-
will also go to consent.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you move it that way.
Okay, can I have a motion then?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we send to the consent agenda of the full city council of its October regular meeting, the assignment and amendment of the lease agreement between the city of Roswell and NTVI Fed as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor of sending the assignment to the October consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed-
Aye.
Opposed, no. Hearing none, then this passes unanimously and will be on the October regular council meeting consent agenda. Thank you all. Next item is actually number 2, Resolution 20-XX, which is the Roswell Air Center minimum standards. Scott?
I am back.
Yes, you are.
So this one and the next resolution coming after that have been projects that the Airport Advisory Commission has been working on for months. Honestly, I think we have a very good product. We started with the old minimum standards that we had and went back and gleaned out what was not necessary and what was outdated out of the old one, and then looked to the FAA regulations to see what was required now, because that advisory circular had changed since the last time that those minimum standards had been written. And as some of you may remember, we redid the ordinance to take these minimum standards out of the ordinance and put them into this document, so it's a little more nimble to change it. So it's only got to be approved by the resolution. In particular, the new resolution, the new ordinance in section 5-5 of chapter 5 provides for the council's approval on these minimum standards. So at the last AAC meeting, it was a unanimous vote to approve the standards and to send them to this committee and then to the full council for approval. I'm not going to read all 30-some-odd pages unless you would like me to. I'm assuming you don't, but at any rate, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you very much. I think, too, that the Airport Advisory Commission did a great job of going through this. They really picked at it and spent a few months, I believe, working on this, so.
Madam Chair, if I can just say.
Please.
Yeah, I went back and listened to, I was at several of the airport the meetings, the advisory committee meetings, and listened, but then I went back and watched what I had not been at to see. And usually stuff like this, I enjoy going through and finding things that need to be fixed, but this is a very clean document. It really is. And I'm sure I could have missed something, but it's a pretty clean document.
Yeah. Thank you. Can we get a motion then on the resolution adopting the minimum standards for commercial aeronautics activity?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we send to full council. Will this go on consent? Parker?
I don't,
You can move it that way, but you don't, the consent resolution allows you to put it
Okay.
on consent, but you don't have to.
I move that we send to full council at the October regular meeting on the consent agenda, recommendation to approve the a resolution adopting the minimal standards for commercial aeronautical activities at the Roswell Air Center.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to send to full council with our recommendation. Any other discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries then. This will be on the consent agenda. Scott, thank you. The next is yours is, no,
Yes,
yes, it's yours too?
it is.
Okay. This is the rail spur maintenance agreement?
No, you missed
Or do
one.
I,
No,
did I?
just one.
Rules and regs.
Oh, I'm sorry, rules and regs. Sorry. Please.
They're all airport, but
I know.
I get to shine today, right?
Yes, it's your meeting.
So once again, this was part of that project where we started with the ordinance, Chapter 5 Aviation, and revamped it, and removed the rules and regulations from that ordinance, and came back to put them into a separate document that would be approved by council, and that's the document you're looking at today. Same thing, we worked on that for quite a few months. This one doesn't have the same type of regulation on it as the minimum standards do, because the difference is that the minimum standards apply toward companies and aeronautical activities that are commercial. This applies to anyone that comes on the airport. So individuals, people working with a company, my people, everyone. These are the rules that we live by on the airport. And so they're purely up to us, what we want to do. And with a lot of discussion, a lot of looking back on the old rules, looking back on how we are currently doing things that were not memorialized anywhere, that's where these rules came from. A little bit of comparing with other airports to see what the norms are. But I feel real comfortable with this document and stand for your questions.
Thank you very much, and to the Advisory Commission for their work on it as well. Any discussion? I know we should have a motion first, but you know how I am. Motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we send to full council at the regular October city council meeting to be placed on consent agenda. The recommendation for approval of resolution adopting rules and regulations at the Roswell Air Center.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the rules and regulations for the Air Center going to full council on the consent agenda. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, then all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, motion carries unanimously, and these will be on the October council agenda. Okay. Next, we have our rail spur maintenance agreement, and that's Parker.
Yeah, I'll handle that one since, once again, I'm the responsible party for having put together this document. So, as you'll read in the whereas clauses, currently Aragon Asphalt and Emulsions leases approximately 13 acres at the Air Center. And as you're all aware also, we are currently in the process of negotiating a sale of that property to Aragon. That's in train now. But separate and apart from that, we've also been talking with Aragon about the fact that because Aragon, their activities out there benefit from use of the city-owned rail spur, that they would reimburse city expenses in maintaining that rail spur up to $20,000 annually. So this agreement would start with a one-year term, and it has 4 options to extend that. And then the other idea would be that if at some point in the future some other tenants come in that are also using the rail spur, then we could look again at realigning that amount and having others contributing to that. I also want to say that today I received some proposed changes to the agreement, very minor, and I meant to hand them out before, but I forgot, so apologize. So if you don't mind, I'll hand them out now, and you can look at them.
Certainly.
Hold on just a moment.
While you're handing those out, does this include a 3% in the CPI? I'm kidding.
Thank you.
And so you'll see the changes are on the second page under the reimbursement part. And for Counselor Foster, who cannot see this, in the first line of reimbursement is added, Aragon will reimburse the city for actual direct costs incurred. And then further down in the last sentence of that, In the event that the city grants to any tenant or landowner at the RAC besides Aragon use of the rail spur in the future, the city will require such party or parties to contribute their equitable share of maintenance costs and revise the reimbursement under this section accordingly. And that should be a period at the end of that, not a comma. And so those are the changes that have been requested, and they seem reasonable to me. So I'm passing them on to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So Counselor Foster, do you have any questions about that? Okay,
Not right now, but I'm about to be with join you. So
He's coming in the building.
oh, are you coming in?
I'm in the
Good.
parking lot.
Oh, great, okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, since he's coming in the parking lot, maybe it'd be good to allow him to see this.
Yes, I'm sure you have a copy
I've got
for
copies.
him. Okay.
So may I ask, Madam Chair,
Please.
just curious, you're the attorney, you understand the reason people like some language and don't like others. Why did they choose use of instead of enjoys a benefit from?
You know, I couldn't really jump in their brain. You'd have to ask them. It doesn't, it's, I don't know.
But you don't foresee that changes anything?
It doesn't bother me. In fact, it's tighter than enjoys the benefit of.
It's true.
Welcome.
Welcome. I guess the minutes need to reflect that Counselor Foster has now joined us in person. Okay, so right now we're looking at what was handed out to us, some requested changes to this agreement. We're on the second page of the agreement under reimbursement. Aragon will or shall reimburse the city for actual direct costs incurred instead of just for costs. What's the real difference in the language? I mean, this is obviously specific, but
Well,
I-
you could imagine that, I mean, you could imagine us trying to charge ancillary, like, costs.
Oh, okay.
You know, overhead or something, you know, that's not a direct expense, but is only tangentially related, and I think they want to cut that
tighten that
possibility out.
Okay, that makes sense to me
Madam
at
Chair?
least. Yes.
But I like the actual, but does this say only up to 20,000?
Per year.
Okay. My drawback on that is if the actual cost is more than 20,000, then we're eating it.
Yes, it is our rail spur.
Well, but true, but it's the weight of the tonnage of their use of it would be the sole use of it right now that's causing the degradation of it. So, and of course, this agreement is an ongoing agreement, correct?
It's an initial one-year term and then with the options to renew.
Okay, so that would be my other thinking on it, would be that for the first year we see it, and then from then on we can negotiate if we realize our cost is going to be way more.
It renews upon mutual written consent of the parties.
Okay, so, thank you.
Okay. Counselor Peterson?
I had a couple of questions.
Certainly.
Was a rail spur inspected?
That I don't know. I would need some expertise from maybe some people who have knowledge of the actual condition of the rail spur. I just drafted the document.
Inspected lately?
So I'll start with, I'm not a railroad inspector and I don't play one on television. But we haven't had it inspected by a third party in about probably 2 years. But that's something that we would like to get back into the habit of having an annual inspection. BNSF inspects it all the time. So we typically know whether we have something going wrong with it or not, because they're real good at feeding back to us. Usually it's negative, but you know, we know quickly whether we have something going on with it.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see an inspection.
Um,
If this When the city sells the property to Ergon, does the city maintain control of this line?
Yes. We own the line from 285 all the way into near where the water towers are, where it terminates. And just for historical perspective, Ergon has already put in, I think it was 20, I forget the exact number, so forgive me, but around $23,000, $24,000 this year without an agreement. So they've already exceeded what we've done this year. And that was off of a BNSF inspection that we worked from last spring.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, that's interesting to me because I had a question about whether or not BNSF had any obligations to this spur, and you're saying that they are the ones that inspect it.
And they're inspecting it for their safety purposes of whether they can haul cars over it.
Okay. Good. So, I mean, that means, so we know they're qualified to inspect. Okay. Are there any questions then about the rest of paragraph 3 reimbursement that there are requested changes on? So basically what this is saying, that the city will require other parties, if they choose to use the line, to contribute their equitable share for the maintenance.
Yeah, and the language is just a little more mandatory than as I had originally drafted that we may. I think that's fair.
Okay. Good. You want to go to, where was the other? Were there more? No, that's it. I'm sorry, just the name. We've got the names.
Just filling in the name of the signatory
Okay.
was the only other change.
So the changes all here on page 2 of 5 of the actual agreement. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we send to full council at the October regular meeting to be placed on consent. The agreement, the rail spur maintenance agreement between the City of Roswell and Ergon Asphalt Emulsions, which would include, as presented with the changed language that was just handed out by Councilor Parker. I'm sorry, I should have used your last name. Patterson.
I think it is. I think it's backwards.
This whole time I've been Patterson Parker.
Yes.
Which would allow us in the agreement for maintenance of that rail spur in that area of up to $20,000 annually.
Second.
Okay, we have a second to recommend to full council. I'm assuming this would not go on the consent.
The motion, I think, was for consent.
Well, did you want
Yes.
this on consent as well? Okay.
Unless it doesn't have to be. It can always be pulled by another counselor.
Sure. Okay.
But
I'm
there
sorry, I
again,
didn't hear consent.
I don't remember what
What the
things have
list
changed since last time I was on the council. Is this allowable for consent?
Yes.
Yeah, the way that we have modified the consent resolution is that you can put anything on there by motion as long as it's not otherwise prohibited from being put on consent.
Then my motion stands.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it. So I have a question. Again, under number 3 reimbursement, we have 45 days to get the information to them. They have 45 days to pay us, reimburse us. 90 days for that transaction seems lengthy to me. Is that typical?
Those were just numbers that I threw out there. So if you don't like them, we can look at revising them.
I mean, I don't know, so I guess I'm asking, but 90 days seems excessive to have it basically open on the books.
As, you know, when I'm drafting these, I kind of take a guess without being someone who has specific knowledge of how the industry works, and if anybody doesn't like it, I assume that they'll change it. So this is where we are.
So if everybody's okay with it, it's fine with me, but it did seem excessive, so anyway. And then also, again, in reimbursement, darn.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
go back to that. I
Sure.
do think there should be a correction there, because I think in there it says
Yeah.
maintenance work with 45 days of completion. It probably is within 45 days.
Yeah, that's
within-
where I was going again after
And
this.
then-
Thank you, Counselor
with-
Foster.
And with that, then there's not a problem, because that clears up.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, forgive me, I have kind of a stupid question, I'm afraid, but in this diagram that you have up on the screen that's also in our packet, are there two spurs? What are these? There, how come we always keep referring to the spur? There actually are two, and they're spurs off.
If you want to get really technical and detailed, there are actually 3 spurs and 1 siding. Because there's another spur that splits off of that one and goes down.
But not on
goes
this
down Hobson's.
particular property.
Correct. It's not on this
'Cause it-
property nor on this diagram. But what we own from 285 is the spur, and then it has sub-spurs off of it. So these 2 are actually sub-spurs off of it. There's another sub-spur that runs west off of Hobson.
Okay, okay,
And then 1 siding behind Building 93.
okay.
Madam Chair,
So-
are they utilizing both of these?
Yes.
Okay.
Not at the moment, but they're planning.
I
to,
hear 3, I have 3, do I hear 4? Do I?
Right? Hey, what time is it?
Speaking of, then I guess my question is, and I'm not sure, thank you, Kurt, for this. No, that's not going to help me. These spurs are going west, is that correct? Am I turned to? South, sorry. Okay, so this, yes, sir. Okay, thank you. So my question is there ever a need, or are we accommodating if there were a need to extend further south? We're not, or is that the whole thing I'm
Yes, we
bottle
are.
wax?
The only thing that we would need to extend further south is to put a railroad crossing on Martin Street on either of the spurs that we wanted to go south.
Right,
They're physically under the asphalt at this point, but it would be anticipated that the wood that they're made of is rotten because they've been covered with asphalt for years. So those crossings would need to be replaced, and then whatever repairs were necessary to the tracks running between buildings 115 and 112 would be necessary.
okay.
But it is possible.
And it's still possible to
Yes,
do it
it
under
is.
this agreement?
It is.
Okay. And Ergon does not have the approval to cross any of this up here at the north end, to close it off. Isn't there a fence or a gate or something on there now?
They have a gate there.
So how
at
does
this
that
time.
affect what could happen?
They would have to open it if we were to extend it. We would probably have to enter into an agreement on that.
Why is there a gate?
Because well, there is on one side. I don't think there's on both, just the one that goes into
I
where they're.
couldn't remember, so I'm sorry.
What's that?
I say I couldn't remember. It's
Yeah,
been a
it's
while
just-
since I looked.
I think it's just the one, I don't remember for sure either, but I think it's just the one that goes into where their tanks are now.
Okay,
But my assumption is that later, as they expand into the rest of the property, that's going to be fenced as well. But they would have to allow access. That'll be part of the agreement.
okay.
Right, we still own the tracks.
Okay, so as I understand it, we have access at all time, whether they choose to gate it off or not, they have to still give us the access.
Correct.
Thank you. All right, where are we? I have no clue. Do we have a motion?
Madam, we had a motion and we had a second. You made a few, you and Counselor
Right.
Foster requested, so I'm just going to accept that as a friendly amendment that those
Okay.
are taken care of, so we don't have to re-motion.
Thank you. Okay, good, appreciate it. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Okay, hearing none, any further discussion from anyone? Okay, we're ready for a vote then. All those in favor of sending the agreement between the city and Aragon for the maintenance of the rail spur, going to full council on the consent agenda with the changes that have been made today. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All those opposed?
No.
No. We have one no and 4 ayes, so this will go
1 no, 3 ayes.
3, what did I say?
4.
That makes 6. Okay. 3 yays and 1 no. Thank you. You know, this time of day is not good for me. It's not my time. All right. Appreciate it. Let's go on now. We have the ordinance, which is actually 20-13, which is approving the sale of the land at the Roswell Air Center. Nobody's there. Is this yours?
I can go up there. I can.
No, you don't have to. Is this?
Yeah, I'll present.
And I'm sure our city manager would like to. Okay.
I was not at the last council meeting, but this was heard and authorized by the city council for advertisement in October. So everyone's already familiar with it. As you all know, sale of land above a certain threshold, $25,000, requires that the city pass an ordinance approving the sale. That's what this ordinance would do in regard to the proposed sale of the Aragon property we were just discussing the last item. Pursuant to that, all the terms and conditions are set forth in the agreement, which is also currently being considered by the city council. And that is also subject to some ongoing negotiations, which I think are pretty close to being wrapped up. The only wrinkle in all of this is that because the proposed sale is at a sales price which is different from what the appraised value, or at least one of the appraised values was, there needs to be a cost justification according to the statute, which permits us to sell land. And such a cost justification has been submitted and is attached in your packet there. Basically, they have agreed to do a whole series of different infrastructure improvements to the road and also put up various I think it's trees and things to help shield the noise. And so it's the judgment of the parties that these improvements would more than make up for any variance between the appraised value and the sales price. Just for everyone's reminder and information, once we pass this ordinance and sign the agreement, it's subject to a petition for a referendum. It has to be signed, the petition, by, I think, the city clerk and I were looking at it this morning, 15% of the qualified electors of the municipality. And it has to be done within 30 days. And if that happens, then there has to be if the petition for the referendum is filed and it's correct, then there has to be an election. And if the sale is then approved by majority of the votes cast, then we can move forward. And if it's not, then the sale is nixed. So that's pretty much the whole deal, and there it is for you to see, right there.
Okay, thank you. Let's have a little discussion before we make a motion. I know that's not proper, but I think it works best for us. Mr. Nebb, did you want to make a comment as well?
Madam Chair, yeah, if I may, councilors. I was going to give you a little bit of a background with this negotiation all the way through to the end, and why city administration supports the sale of this property. This negotiation actually started approximately 3 years ago. Started in that process. It had its stops and starts all the way through that, but it began with Aragon reaching out and introducing themselves to me as I had just come on board as a city manager about 6 months before that. And so as we discussed this, as we talked about the ins and outs of it, the negotiation or the terms of the agreement continued to shift on that through that past 3 years. What you have before you is the culmination of all of that time that was spent in looking at that, all the improvements and everything else. And so that's the culmination of that information. With this agreement, I think the one thing that is still being discussed, but as tentative terms have been agreed upon by both parties, is a first right of refusal on the property in the event that if Aragon was to close up shop and want to sell their property. The first right would give the city the opportunity to reacquire the property at that point in time to allow some control to the city in order to put the property back out or to continue leasing it at that time. That was a suggestion from some of the city councilors, and so we were able to have that conversation. I believe we're right at the tail end of that. We'll have that ready for the agreement at the time of the city council meeting. So, and we hope that it never has to be initiated, but it should be. As we've walked through this, again, we've talked a lot about this property and everything. The track itself remains the city's property, just like a road crossing somebody's property with property on either side. It is a public thoroughfare, and it remains the city's opportunity for that. We talked a little bit about the southern possibility of increasing that there. One of the pieces in the agreement was, of course, with Wells Street, which is an unplatted road that goes up to the north, and it bisects some of the property that we have up there, and that property cannot be. If we take the road out, it can be replatted as rail access properties. And we believe that improvement to that track will be very beneficial to us as we try to put more people along that asset of the rail spur. And so as you get farther north, we would replat those properties up through there and allowing for more rail access, which we believe that rail access is an asset to the city, and that's why we maintain control of that. Along with that, by removing the unplatted road, and that road has been closed for approximately a year and a half now, as we did the improvements to the intersection and such. We have not had too many complaints about the use of that space. I believe that the neighborhood has found different routes through the neighborhood to get over to Earl Cummings and such. The other thing that we have been looking at, that staff has been looking at, is the possibility of another access point onto Hobson from the north. Because I think that was one of the concerns from some of the city councilors was if we need that seventh access point to there. Right now we have 6 access points out of the neighborhood. I believe with the buffering of the property, because again, we're talking an industrial use, which is an allowable use in that area, and it does take up the open property as well too, that having a buffer within that will serve a good purpose coming from the residential neighborhood into these industrial uses. With that, I know this has come back and forth quite a bit over the last 3 years. I stand for any questions with it, but I believe that the terms are appropriate and efficient and sufficient enough to protect the city in the case of any other conflicts that we are aware of. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Are there any questions for the city manager, Councilor Perry?
Madam Chair, are there any, I know a lot of times when we do property sales, we have someone who comes in, says they would like to build this, or they would like to add this to the land. They're going to bring so many jobs with and stuff. We will have, for sake of the legal term, clawback ability. Is there any clawback ability within the current negotiation agreement?
We did not establish any clawback into this agreement, and part of the reasons were they do anticipate the potential of increasing jobs there, but in the conversation that we had with the company, it was more a protection of the jobs we currently had there. And that by increasing the intent of what they plan on doing is building a $2.5 million storage tank for more emulsion within the system. It'll be close to the current plant system that's there. The bare ground on the west side of the spur will be utilized for future development, not what they're planning right now, because they want to keep the piping short and between the system. So the intent, and of course, their concern based upon the negotiation is the investment of $2.5 million. They would like it on property that they own. And so that,
Could I jump in there? There is a clawback if they don't do the infrastructure improvements that they've contracted for, but not on job creation.
thank you, Counselor. And so, yeah, so we did not set anything very specific in there because the predication was always on having that infrastructure increase.
So within what is currently drawn up, there is, we can expect that there is going to be some infrastructure, some pretty substantial infrastructure changes there that comes with this. So there's something there. Okay.
Yes, right. And so in the contract, it says that they'll be built into the deed a reversion clause, which if they do not complete the infrastructure improvements that are described in the contract for sale, then we have the right to take the property back at that point, subject to disgorging the funds.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
I yield.
Thank you. Counselor Peterson?
I appreciate you saying that you'd like to find another access on the east side. And the reason I say that, I used to live out there, and it's really tough to go down Burn Street. And most of these streets are real narrow.
Yes, sir.
And when I was on the school board, we had serious problems with school buses out there with the bus stops, because the roads were, a bus could barely fit down through there. So if you close this road, I mean, you have closed this road off, but you're forcing the people to go back west, back to Main Street. And people speed, they're gonna cause a lot more accidents, I think, going through these neighborhoods. If you had a shorter way for somebody on the east side to get out, they won't have to mess with driving through all that stuff. And also, the appraisal's $90,000 off, and I think that's pretty significant, and that's why I voted against it on the council meeting. I don't think the cost justification is there. And I also think that we need more of a screen from the people. These people are going to be able to see and smell, all this work that's going on. And I think you're going to get a lot more complaints from it. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone? I do that. If I may. Mother, may I?
You're the chair. You asking me for permission.
Well, but I always ask you guys first. Gosh, I appreciate the effort that's gone into this, but I think my concern, first of all, I hate approving an ordinance or any document that I don't see the exhibits, and the exhibit 1 and 2 and C and the cost justification are not here.
The letter from Aragon is going to be the cost justification. I didn't put an exhibit sticker on it, but that's going to be the exhibit.
So this is the cost justification.
And the other exhibit is going to be the contract for sale, which we are currently negotiating the final terms of, but which you saw at the council meeting. That's the other exhibit.
Okay, that's there. So that's one of these
So you
exhibits.
have seen them, I believe, all of them.
What's exhibit C
Where's that?
in the bottom of our packet, page 75, in the terms of sale.
Oh, Exhibit C to the sales contract.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So this is okay, thank you. That takes care of that. And then I think I share some of the concerns that Councilor Peterson just mentioned. The justification seems to be, well, that they're going to add landscaping and, did I read berm somewhere or something? But they're adding it to their own property. So I can appreciate the concept that it's enhancing the city in general, but not specifically. So so help me justify that they're putting money in their own property to justify not paying us the appraised value.
Yes,
Madam
ma'am.
Chair, I think they're also going to work on the
Yeah.
road. They're going to put up to $150,000 into reconstructing the road north of the property.
But I don't think that's in, oh, maybe it
Yeah.
is. Okay.
Yeah,
You're-
and Madam Chair, that is correct from Mr. Patterson. The significant investment of the funding is for that road removal and the inclusion of another road to access the property of the building that we currently have back there. As you talk about the landscaping and buffering, understand first, there is no buffering there currently
Correct.
along any of that property. Within our planning and zoning requirements, we have landscaping requirements, so when somebody develops their property, please put buffering. If there's a significant difference within the uses, please put buffering on your property. Similar to the I think the change of the assisted living home to a hotel. So the idea was to put walls or barricades down both sides of that property to protect the neighborhood around that. So asking them to put trees or buffering on their property to protect from the neighborhood, we look at that as a benefit to that neighborhood that we currently do not have there. And so it's very similar development, just a landscaping requirement that we would like to see, because the industrial use of that property is very different than the neighborhood use that is currently there, but the buffering does not exist today.
Okay. Okay. So then I have one other question, and I can't see where it is, but this is zoned, is Bill Morris here? Yes,
He is.
This is zoned heavy industrial, and I'm sure that when it, or originally it's still part of the air center, so maybe there's some kind of variance or whatever there. But in lieu of what you just said, when we sell them this property, it's no longer city property, and you've got heavy industrial right next to residential. Is that okay?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if, is the current use of what Airgun is doing, is that considered a heavy industrial or a light industrial use? Mr. Morris?
It would be considered an I-1, not an I-2, which is the lighter industrial. That's what it's zoned right now for.
But still, it's not the policy of the city to put a residential next to an I-1 or 2, is it?
We don't have a lot of areas like that. I think
I know this is
the intent would be to have a buffer area or a protection area for that. And that's where the first right of refusal came from as well too. We want to be able to control if Airgon's use, because we believe that Airgon's use is acceptable because it's currently there. And so if they expand what they're currently doing there, then there should be no increase to the impact to the neighborhood, because it'd just be increasing the development of that current business. If the business was to change, and I think that's where we had at least one counselor comment on the concern about the use changing dramatically for that, and that is where we came up with the first right of refusal. So if they try to sell the property to somebody else for a different use, we have the right to protect the community from that.
Okay. Counselor Perry, go ahead.
Madam Chair, if I can just add to that, I think that I'm getting a better understanding. There's nothing buffering right now. That we already have an I-1 against residential. It's not something I created or that's from time past. And I would dare say, Mr. Morris is here. If I'm wrong, just say no and come up. But if it does get drastically more into a situation, they would have to reapply for rezoning or move to another property in order to do I-2.
It is I-2.
It is I-2. I thought you said it was I-1.
He said what they're doing is I-1.
Correct.
But it's an I-2.
It is in
zone.
an I-2 area. I'm
Right.
sorry, I did not understand that part. No, okay.
But to kind of tag along with what you said, Counselor Perry, I think my concern is that if we no longer own the property, we're not sure what's going to happen with the rest of that property. And buffering it may or may not be a good barrier. I don't know. I'm belaboring this. I don't mean to do that. I'm sorry. Okay. Any other comments?
I think we had some members from the
Yes.
public that wanted to speak.
Yeah. Let's hear from Counselor Peterson. and then-
One more statement. The cost justification, the $250,000, that's on property, on a bunch of properties, not on this. So I don't understand how you can do, with the $90,000 short, I don't know how you can do a cost justification if you're doing work on all these other properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council or staff? Okay, let's hear from the public. Gentlemen. Please talk into the microphone and give us your name and your address, please, for the record.
My name is Kyle Armstrong. My address is 1412 North Circle Diamond here in Roswell. I would just like to recommend that the sale of this property be rejected and that the city instead approach Ergon with appropriate terms that would provide them with the security they need, as well as clawbacks that would also help protect the city over the long term for any changes. With regards to the comments that have been made as to who owns the rail spur, there are obviously some practical issues there of a rail spur that passes through private property. If that rail spur ever needs to be realigned for something further south or on that property, added to, if Ergon has placed structures there, that ability is gone. I'll even point out with regards to the provision allowing right of first refusal, we already have one property at the Air Center which did not have sufficient clawbacks, and they're not trying to sell it, but they're just keeping their stuff there in storage. Would this be the highest and best use? We don't know. That's something that may occur far down the line, but we can't tell that. And I believe Mr. Gass will comment on this as well. As part of the Airport Authority Task Force, I traveled to Louisiana, and we met with 3 separate governance structures out there, and we put the question to them, this is back in 2017, of whether or not they would sell property, and this was because there was a separate property the city was considering selling at that time. All 3 airports said no. Because this was Louisiana, there was actually a little bit more colorful language, but it was an emphatic no. It's not something they would ever consider doing. The city commissioned in 2017 a report, the Roswell International Air Center Economic Feasibility Study and Action Plan, and that was done in conjunction with the EDC, that recommended, if I can just read a few things from this real quick. Recommended that the city prepare a 5-year airport strategic plan that determines the vision and mission of the airport and measurable actions for implementation. It also recommended that the airport have professional, proactive asset management structure in place. In general, the real estate development should be viewed as an ongoing business rather than bricks and mortar to be maintained. The airport should have the asset management as well as a property management. To the best of my knowledge, neither of those have been followed or done, which essentially means you're flying blind. What is the best possible use of this property? Has anybody looked at that to see? There are certainly real estate economic groups that would look at it and could advise as to what the best and highest use is. You're talking about selling taxpayer property without having the idea of whether or not that's going to be the best use for the city, not knowing what any future use might need to be, not knowing if you're going to be able to address structures that may be placed on there that would hinder the city from doing other things down the line. You know, I think everybody agrees that the airport is one of, if not our most important asset, and selling it without having the all the knowledge in hand on whether or not that is really the wisest thing to do does not make sense. So I would urge you all to reject the sale. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Name and address, please.
My name is Kurt Gass. I live at 1509 Latigo Circle here in Roswell. Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me come talk to you and counselors. I think the sale of this land is really bad for the Roswell taxpayers. I want to address a couple of points. One is you've got two appraisals. One was $330,000. The other one is significantly higher. The first one really is not a valid instrument. It gave no value to the rail service there. I've given you a map here that everybody has, and it shows the rail spur on the right goes into Ergon's yard that they're using right now. The rail spur on the left goes into, they're using, but they use it for storage, and they take trucks there to store, or tankers there to store. It actually goes, again, there's, as was mentioned before, there's asphalt there, but that rail spur goes down in between buildings 15 and 112. And so what you're losing here, again, my first point is the first appraisal isn't worth its weight, the paper it's written on. It didn't give value. He did a bad job. We got a second appraisal. It's been looked at by Bud Kunkel here in town, who is one of the premier appraisers in the Southwest. And he's the reason we went and got a second appraisal, because when he looked at it, he said, there's no value given here. He didn't do his job. So we went out and got a second one. My second point is, and it's sort of been made here, it's worth $400 and some thousand right now. If you decide to sell it, which I don't think you should, but if that's the sales price. If they're going to make improvements, have been talked about, that's their cost. But my third point is you're losing the economic control of that whole part of the airport. And we all agree that that airport is our future in Roswell. We haven't given what is the best and highest use of this. We're saying, oh, we've got a tenant here who's paying less than half the rent that they should be, and there's nothing we can do about that right now because I understand they have a lease through 2028, I believe. But just because we can get a little bit of money right now does not mean we should sell it for less and give up control. As Mr. Armstrong said previously, we've been told by multiple experts in economic development, do not sell an asset that you already have. You've lost economic control. And so I'm asking you to reject this and keep the control of this asset and keep the possibility of great economic benefit to the city of Roswell and Chaves County by holding on to this. It's a really important piece of land with rail spurs into it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions of our two commentors? Okay. All right, thank you both. Any other comments now from council or staff? Yes, Counselor Foster.
And as I understand it, and as I've read the other portion of it, the actual road that they're going to be building to service our other buildings there, now, I've seen different prices, but $250,000 is that what we're looking at, if we had to build it?
The estimate to remove that road and put a new road back in was right around 300,000 if the city did the work.
Okay.
And that is why we put within the agreement that the property owner would take care of that work because they can get the work done substantially less than what the city has to.
But it's going to be done not on their property, it's going to be on our property, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so they're adding 300, or they're saving us 300,000, buying a property for 340,000 that has another estimate, or another appraisal of 430. So it's 90,000 off, but they're replacing it with our work of 300,000, so their expenditures, well, I don't know what their expenditure is, but if we had to do the $300,000 work, then we're looking at a $640,000 difference. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now refresh my memory. This has been approved by council to advertise and have a public hearing, or? We did
Yes.
that last month.
Correct.
So it's scheduled already for the October council meeting to be approved.
Yeah, Madam Chair, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, the ordinance was put forward for the public hearing. We held off on the sell agreement in order to negotiate the final terms. And so
Right.
both of those items you would see on this next agenda so that the public hearing could be held.
Thank you. So,
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
it sounds as if there's a lot of questions from within this committee, and I'm not trying to count votes before people vote by any means, but it does sound like there are some concerns from some. It's council has already approved the public hearing.
Yes.
So I would like to consider making a motion to send this to full council without recommendation of this
Okay.
committee.
Okay.
So I make a motion that we send ordinance 20-13, ordinance approving the sale of approximately 13.3974 acres of real estate property located at the Roswell Air Center to Aragon Asphalt and Emulsions to full council without recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, then.
And Madam Chair, just do that. It's in the hands of council already. Mr. Patterson's agreeing with me on this. I'm assuming he's nodded. It's in the hands of the council already. So
Let's
this
vote on it.
just allows without recommendation.
So the
Let's-
only question.
Let's vote on it.
Well, the only question I have is that, well, I guess it wouldn't matter. I was going to say, there's still going to be some additions to what we have in front of us and what went to council in the month of September. So I don't know if you want to add that kind of caveat or not.
Well, just another reason sending forth without recommendation, because we
recommendation.
don't have clear, that I would feel more comfortable that way.
Okay, any other discussion?
I think we should vote on it. Yes or
Okay,
no?
we do have a motion on the floor. So all those in favor of this going to council with no recommendation from the legal committee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
1 no and 3 ayes.
Madam Chair, could we take a 3 or 4 minute brief
Sure.
break? Thank you.
Let's do that. What time is it?
5:25.
It's 5:24. Let's be back by 5:30. I didn't say it at the time, but there's also a mention of Exhibit B in this agreement. Thank I've got my papers totally out of order, let's see, it is, I don't know where I saw it, wait a minute.
Is that the one you saw it?
I wrote it on the back of this, so I'm looking for page 7, I'm looking for page 70.
There is an Exhibit B to the sale agreement.
Right, but, oh, shoot, what am I doing here? Okay, folks, it's now 5:30, so we are back from our recess, and I have no idea where we are. Item 6, yes, which, yeah.
Page 79.
Yeah, thank you very much. Item 6, which is on page 79, it is the directing budget priorities. Go ahead.
Sure. Okay. As the committee will remember, at the special city council meeting a little while ago, this directive was proposed by the mayor, and then after discussion, it was referred to this committee for further work. And so, in preparation for that, I have taken the liberty of drafting the attached resolution, which would basically put into resolution form the idea behind that directive. So I think, I won't go into all the details because I think we all know it. Basically, the idea is to give the city manager the direction in terms of how to prioritize any revenue which comes in, which is over and above the anticipated revenue, which was quite anticipated to be very low, and so far has not been as low as what was anticipated.
Thank you. We have the resolution that's been created in front of us. Counselor Perry?
Yes, Madam Chair. Just a few things. Number one, I personally believe, and I've shared this, I know this was something the mayor brought forth last time, but I shared with him my concerns. I believe that we've got a city manager who is well capable of looking at what the needs are of the city. He has a much better grasp on prioritization than I do, or any other counselor, or all 10 of us plus the mayor combined. He still has a better understanding. Some of this has already been taken care of. Half of the furloughs have been already taken care of, and I would project very soon, within the next few city council meetings, probably taking care of the others as well. As we're starting to see more months come in and doing well, the reinstatement of step increases for staff. I already have spoken with Juan Fuentes and also with our city manager. That will be on the finance committee for next week, so that's already, I can't promise what the outcome of that's going to be, granted, but that is already moving forward. So number 1 and number 2 are already moving forward. And number 3, we've got a city manager who needs to work with staff. He needs direction from Mr. Fuentes and from department heads as to what their needs are, not from council. That's my personal thoughts. So my thoughts would be to not send this resolution and to move forward with what we currently have in place.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Foster?
I concur with Counselor Perry. In fact, I spoke at the special city council meeting up against this anyway, because I believe that if our city manager wasn't more capable of it, we needed to get a new city manager, but we have one that can do this, and so I don't see why we need to be directing him.
Thank you. Counselor Peterson?
Thanks, Councilor Perry, for clearing a lot of this up. The reinstatement of step increases for city staff. They need to, if they're due increase, they need to be paid. And the furloughs, I didn't like the furloughs, but at the time, we couldn't do nothing about it. And I believe the city manager, he's gonna, there's a natural priority of a lot of these issues. So I don't know why this is even coming. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I think as Mr. Patterson said, and we know it came from, there was a motion at council to refer it to us, and it was from my request that we put it into a resolution form. So that's some of the wordsmithing, I guess, that was referred to us. But I have to agree, it's a bit out of the realm of what this committee does. So this could either die for lack of a motion, but I think a motion
more
saying why is much more appropriate. So, Councilor Perry, you look ready to make
Yes,
such a
and Madam
motion.
Chair, if I can just say, I do want to say, I can't speak for the mayor, but I think from hearing him, his passion is not, I don't think, to tell our city manager what to do. I think he's trying to let the public know and to let our employees know that we do appreciate and we do see value in what they offer our citizens, and also to put good faith forward to our constituents that we recognize that we have more money and we need to be utilizing it and not letting it sit. So I want to just speak to that. I don't think that there was anything else in that. I think that it was a good step forward. It looked like the solution that was necessary at the time, I think, but I think as we have further glance at it, we recognize that finance is going to take care of part of this next week, hopefully, and then City Council will ratify that at the meeting. So my motion at this time would be to not send to full council the resolution directing the city manager to prioritize additional revenue as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the resolution directing the city manager to prioritize. That is not to send to full council. Is there any further discussion, questions, comments?
If we can just add for the record that the rationale behind my motion is that our city manager has the ability to already get with staff pursuant to the prioritization of submitted for equipment, facilities, infrastructure, whatever. The others are going to be taken up shortly.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. So again, the motion is not to send this to full council with the rationale that the city manager already has basically the authority to do this. Any further comments? Okay, all those in favor then of the motion not to send to full council, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Does that mean it just dies? If it doesn't go to,
Yeah.
that's kind of an.
It's a semantic distinction between making no motion and making a motion to do nothing.
Okay. Okay, let's move on. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the OMA, which is the Old Municipal Airport Master Plan. Mr. Morris is here to give us a presentation.
Good afternoon. As stated, this is a presentation of the Old Municipal Airport Master Plan with a special emphasis on the Cielo Grande area concerning two projects that we have that are in capital or have received capital outlay funding. As stated, we got two of these in the capital outlay. The first one was $850,000 for the development of two new baseball fields. In addition, we got $1.4 million for the development of an all-inclusive park. Before we can start really construction on these recreational facilities, really want to be looking at a master plan that's been approved so that the funds can be spent on the construction of these projects, also looking for master plan approval for the other four quadrants, or other three quadrants as well. As has been shown many times, the first quadrant up here in the northeast is primarily residential. We do have up there Game and Fish, Noonop, the Joy Center, and then a couple of fraternal organizations. Down in the southwest quadrant is residential. There's also a special emphasis on trying to correct the connection with 8th Street. The northwest quadrant is the multifamily section with the plaza. And then just a little bit more detail. You can see the single family that's projected to be between lots between 1/4 and 1/2 acre. The southwest quadrant is your estate section, anywhere from 1 to 1/2 acre lots on the very south, and then 1/4 to 1/2 acre above that. Boeing Boulevard doesn't exist, but there really needs to be another road that cuts that block in half. The plaza, you see multifamily townhouses that would be projected, as well as the commercial corner down right at the Sycamore and College, as well as the plaza section. This is what's being proposed. It would be a small, intimate area, about no more than 1.25 acres, for a new plaza, the first one that would be installed in this part of the state. Wide sidewalks, so we could have outdoor activities. We can't do that in the downtown right now. The sidewalks are too small. Basically pre-wired to make this an active area. And the idea would be that basically it would be commercial on the first floor and then allow for apartments or residential in any other second and third floors. But right now, we really want to be looking at this quadrant. Obviously, this is Cielo Grande. You can see what's there right now. You got the soccer complex out the northwest section. You got recreation facility up the northeast. You've got a long detention area. You do have a partially completed amphitheater. The electrical's in, the mountain, or the mound is in, some trees are in, but the actual facility was never constructed. So what's being proposed is that this particular part here be used for the 2 baseball fields, and really and then this for generally over here for the all-inclusive park. And what we want to do is propose 2 Little League facilities that would allow for tournament play for both Nunop and the Lions Hondo. And of that $850,000, we're proposing that that a master plan for the Cielo Grande area be prepared and supporting engineering plans for the entire area. What we would like to do is draw out all the needed infrastructure ahead of time so you don't have to add things or move lines or increase lines later. Kind of think about it ahead. And then also construct a primary roadway that would link, you see it right there, that would provide access to those ball fields. That would be a real driveway from Montana to College. It has an additional benefit providing access to the all-inclusive park. As I said, this was the genesis of this is try to create a unified baseball facility for tournament play. The other fields would be maintained for practice fields, so each of the leagues would get their own circle. Over here has been proposed for the for all-inclusive park, and when we looked in here, originally what we were thinking about was kind of creating something at the very beginning, but we kind of thought, well, here are the components. You got an all-inclusive park area. We had a dancing, a fountain park. They don't. A lot of these kids don't like water being dumped on their heads, so the dancing park allows them to have a water feature that is non-threatening. You've got a baseball or a parking lot. You've got sensory parks, which are those areas that, enhancement, the parabolic reflective mirrors and all that kind of thing, as well as picnic shelters. And so the idea is to create a place down here that families could go, enjoy the water, enjoy the park, enjoy the sensory park, and be able to recreate. Now, part of this is an entry feature you see at the very beginning. This has been proposed by Kiwanis, and it's something along these lines. This is not anywhere near it, but the idea is that they are wanting to build an entrance way to provide for some kind of recognition on this site. This would be something that obviously be negotiated with the administration. and the city council. But after talking with, this over with Jim Burris, you know, we thought, well, why don't we move it a little bit closer to the recreation facility? The benefit that we have here is that we can utilize this underutilized parking space right now. If you go up there, it's rarely anywhere near full. That way you can save the money from having to build another parking lot. You don't have to maintain it. And so you can put the money directly into more the widgets and things that you'd have going on here. And then a final version, this is kind of what we kind of like the best because it allows for more expansion in the future, kind of turn it that way. So that's kind of where we're at. We are looking to make all these presentations to all of these committees and take it to, I got infrastructure on Monday, and then city council in October. And what we'll be looking for is a final commitment on those 2 locations so we can proceed with these 2 projects and stand for any questions. This is just a discussion anyway, so.
Thank you. Okay, questions, comments?
Madam Chair, just a couple of questions with the all-inclusive. The all-inclusive, it is for all children, correct? It'll be
Yes.
something rather large. What is the current condition of the park that is on College up next to Cielo Grande? What condition is that park in right now?
Is that the skateboard park?
The playground. Yes, by the bathrooms there.
By the ball fields? In Noonop?
By the soccer. Or is it gone? I don't utilize.
Yeah,
Right there next to the bathrooms there.
I can't tell, that would have to be something from Jim, you know, to give you a rundown.
Okay. I was just wondering, I just know that we have so many parks. I was in a meeting earlier, well, not a meeting, just a sitting down with the mayor early and discussing that we do have some parks that have not had playground upgrades in probably 40 years. I can think of one over, I'm thinking that may be 5th Street over across the railroad tracks going towards Atkinson. There's
It's on the north side there.
Yes, sir. I just didn't know if once completion of this, what kind of shape that was in, if there'd be the potential, because these are so close, to utilize those by moving that to another and enhancing other areas of our town that do not have such equipment. That's just a thought that has nothing to do with your presentation, but just a thought there. I do believe, though, and I appreciate bringing this to this committee as well, since I've heard it before, the infrastructure is very vital to move forward with in that planning, which is, so really right now we're not deciding in October, November, whenever, if we're putting ball fields necessarily, we're looking at infrastructure consideration.
That's correct. And the idea is that you can lay out your pipes, your widgets underneath in a way that maximizes their efficiency without, so you don't have to go back and tear them out or replace them or underutilize them to pay more than what you have. So, well, that's
The
it.
only other thing that I would say is I do like the idea of the all-inclusive park, getting closer to that parking lot. It gets it further away from the road there, so that's a good idea. I appreciate that.
And Jim's already started working in his own mind on how to make improvements even to these plans with berms and additional screening from some of the other uses that are around it, so.
Yes, Councilor Peterson.
Well, I'm not, I think that park and those ball fields should be in different areas, but that's a different fight, I guess. The all-inclusive park, is that gonna have a bathroom?
Yes, absolutely.
Because some of our bathroom facilities at our parks are terrible. The splash pad, that thing is awful. I could name, the tennis courts is awful. They closed them all off, for the COVID. And then, I get a lot of calls, people, they're walking and hiking on Cielo Grande and they can't use the bathroom. And then I also complained about the swimming pool. People aren't allowed to use those bathrooms unless they pay to go in. It's not you, but I think some counselors they don't like bathrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Can I just ask very quickly, do we have agreements on both of these monies, do you know?
I believe we do. Yes.
And
They're
is there both of them?
Both of them are in contract with the state.
Okay, and does it have that clause in it that says we have to spend so much by so?
Yes, yeah.
That's,
Yeah, that follow the same legislative stuff. So we have to spend whatever the
5%.
5%
5%
within
of,
6 months of the contract signing.
and approximately when was that?
I think most of it all happened back in August. I
The
think
end
that
of
was when-
August?
That was when we saw a bunch of
Okay.
them coming through. So, I mean, is
Okay.
that right, Juan? We received contracts from the state on these projects back in August. Yeah.
So basically, we have until the end of February-ish
Right.
to spend
5%.
5% of each of
Yeah.
these, so, okay.
And I know that Mr. Morris's plan here shows the ability to tie both the all-inclusive park and the funding that we had received for the ball fields together, where we get the benefit of both for the
Great.
entire Cielo Grande, so.
Great. Okay,
And
thank you all.
can I have a point of clarification? Do we have to actual spend or just encumber?
We have to spend.
Okay.
Okay. That's something we all need to be mindful of, so, thank you, Bill and Joe. Anything else on this? Okay. Thank you. We have one more item on the agenda.
Yep.
Which is really a non-action item, I think, at this point, but a discussion on the idea of becoming a charter city, so.
So, thank you, everybody, for hanging in there, 'cause I know it's been a long day already. I will try not to take up too much time with this, but I think everybody knows that the whole charter discussion has been one of those things that's just been simmering. I know it's been simmering as long as I've been here, just comes up every once in a while. And so it was kind of an idea that we would at least bring it up and kind of have a little presentation on it, just to stimulate some conversation about it in a more explicit fashion. So just generally speaking, and you may already know this, but again, just to get the conversation going, municipalities can be charter or non-charter or statutory. So the difference being that statutory cities are created by an act of the legislature and are essentially creatures of the legislature. They do what the legislature says that they can do, and they cannot do anything else. So they're limited to the express grants of authority from the legislature. On the other hand, a charter city has, as the name implies, is incorporated pursuant to its own charter provision, and it's the mirror image, whereas the statutory city can only do what it's expressly permitted to do. A charter city can do anything that its charter allows, of course, but anything that is not expressly prohibited under state law. So it's kind of the mirror image. The idea being to create maximum self-government of the municipality. In New Mexico, the charter power actually comes from the New Mexico Constitution. It was an amendment in 1970 that created the ability for cities to incorporate charters. And then after that, the Municipal Charter Act was put into the municipal code. Right now, by my count, I'm aware of 12 municipalities that are charter or home rule, and I put 5 of them up there. Of the 5 most populous cities in the state, we are the only one that's not currently a charter. Roswell was established by an act of the legislature in the late 19th century. Obviously, the community predates that, but from a legal perspective, it was created at that time and has never adopted a home rule charter. So for a statutory city such as ourselves, we are governed by the municipal code that provides the forms of government that we can have and also the legislative powers that we can have. Pursuant to that, we can pass ordinances and resolutions not inconsistent with state law that give effect to the enumerated powers in the municipal code to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And we can enforce that with petty misdemeanors that can punish someone, as we all know, up to 90 days in jail or $500 fine. Those are some of the powers that are enumerated. There's a lot more. You'll know practically any time that I come with you guys to pass an ordinance or to do something like that, you'll almost always see me point to, here's the place in the municipal code that allows us to do it, and here's what it allows us to do. And the reason why is because we are a statutory city, and so we have to look for that express grant of authority for anything that we do. So, yeah, you see me all the time, 3- whatever. I almost always start my presentations with under 3- whatever, this is what we can do, and that's why. On the other hand, a charter city is granted by the New Mexico Constitution. They can establish all legislative powers and exercise and perform all functions not expressly denied by a general law or its own charter. A general law meaning that the state can only legislate home rule municipalities by legislation that's effective statewide. It can't corner municipal issues. Those are the kind of the cornerstone of what the municipality is able to self-govern. So it can only legislate by general law, by statewide types of laws. So again, that provides for maximum self-government, and there's a liberal construction given to the powers of such municipalities, meaning that the benefit of the doubt and the assumption is that they can do it, and somebody challenging that has to prove that they can't do it by an express denial in a general law. The two limitations that are set forth in the Constitution there are no private or civil laws governing civil relationships. Like many constitutional provisions, that's a little bit opaque. I'm not sure what that means right off the bat, but I would assume it means like contracts and perhaps domestic relations. And then also, charter cities are still limited in their penalties to petty misdemeanors. Under the Municipal Charter Act, they can adopt any form of government that is deemed expedient and beneficial. Obviously, nothing inconsistent with the Constitution. They can't levy taxes that are not permitted by other laws, and they obviously cannot pass an ordinance providing for expenditure of public funds for other than a public purpose. So pretty much no duh kind of stuff. When you do adopt a charter, your prior existing ordinance and resolutions continue forward, so it's not like it's wipes clean. It's not a carte blanche, blank slate. It carries forward, so you don't have to start from scratch. Okay, and so what it says is no law relating to a municipality inconsistent with the provisions of the charter shall apply to the municipality. What that means is all the provisions under the municipal code, which we were talking about before, those, if they conflict with the charter governs. The charter governs over the municipal code, and that's in the Municipal Charter Act.
That's interesting.
Yeah. How that goes in practice, we'll see. Okay, I thought I would talk a little bit. It's kind of a convoluted process to adopt a charter. So the first thing, a charter discussion is initiated either by a petition signed by 5% of the qualified electors, which is code for registered voters, or it can be initiated by an action of the governing body. The first step is you create a charter commission. It has to have at least 7 members. They're appointed by the presiding officer of the governing body, which in this case would be the mayor. They has to be bipartisan, and their job is to create a draft charter for consideration by the governing body. And so then when they're done with that, they refer that to the governing body. The governing body can either adopt that, or it can shoot it back to the commission with an instruction to fix it because they don't like it. And this can actually go back and forth several times until they're happy with it. Thereafter, the proposed charter has to be published for a month, and 1,000 copies have to be made and distributed for 3 weeks prior to an election. At that point, a special election is held. The proposed charter has to be approved by a majority of those who vote. If approved, it becomes effective no earlier than 60 days, and during that time, there's actually a special election is held, and an entire new slate of officers have to be elected based on the new positions that are created by the charter. The charter is then filed with the Secretary of State and the county clerk upon being effective, and that charter thereafter governs the municipality and can only be modified by a similar process of majority vote of the qualified electors. I think everyone can figure out it for themselves what the pros and cons are, but the pros are supposed to be it creates flexibility. We don't have to wait all the time for the legislature to tell us what we can and can't do, local autonomy, and of course, local decision-making, local participation, responsiveness, the idea being if we need something done, we can do it ourselves. We don't have to go and ask for, permission from Santa Fe. And, locals know what's best for the local community, so local expertise decides what to do. That's kind of supposed to be what's good about it. The cons, part of it's going to be the expense, as we just looked at all the things we have to do to get it done. That's not necessarily a cheap proposition. And then also, arguably, it creates confusion to say, it's more difficult to figure out what you have. It's easier to figure out we can do it because we've been told we can do it. It's harder to figure out, can we do it? Have we been told we can't do it? That's a little bit harder to figure out. And then, of course, it creates confusion in the sense that every municipality becomes a law unto its own, and instead of having statewide uniformity. So, again, I'm not asking, or staff is not asking for you guys to take any action necessarily today. We just kind of wanted to stimulate some conversation about it, and if y'all want to take some action or do something about it down the road, we're open to it.
Okay, thank you very much. Wow, it's a lot to think about. Is there any discussion, any questions? Discussion items? Direction?
I'll just say, I think everybody's getting tired. A lot of things to discuss, but probably better for another day. This gives us a clean, at least recognition and sort of that intro, if you would,
Right.
to the class on what is a charter, how could it function. There's a lot of things involved. This is not something that I don't think this committee or council just says, yeah, by January we want to be ready to jump into something. But getting the conversation started, because I know I've heard for years, I think Councilor Foster, when he very first came on the council, how long ago was that? Yeah, and 10 years ago, when he was elected, that was one of the things he desired for us to at least consider. And there's always big fish on the plate, and then there's little fish that, and there's always been something big that we've needed to concentrate on, but I think that he's been a voice that has asked us to at least start looking at that. And there have been other counselors through the years, and so I think that it's time that we sort of take a really good, strong look at it as a council and decide what and let our community tell us what they would like. And more importantly than what we want, let our community tell us what they would like to have.
Thank you.
So what I could do is just email this slides out to everybody.
That'd be great.
And then we'll just put it on as another discussion item next time, and we'll have already done the presentation, so we can just go straight into any thoughts and comments people have.
Do that. And I appreciate your reference to statute. Thank you for that.
Can you email the statute also?
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
A lot of food for thought right there. So it will be on next month for, again, probably discussion.
Sure.
Great. Okay. Is there anything else to be brought up before this committee today by anyone?
I do just want to beg your indulgence and thank you for, sorry about the switch. The Boys and Girls Club had a staff shortage, and so some of the board decided we'd sit in with the kids. And
Good.
so I was fortunate enough that I could sit in there and be on my phone still, and there, as the kids were getting picked up. And so
Sure.
I then
Now we're better understanding some of the sounds
Some
that
of
we
the
were
sounds
getting.
we heard.
yes. Thanks.
That's great. Any further discussion? Okay, then let's call the meeting adjourned at 6:05. Thank you all. Have a good evening.